Hello and welcome to another Passion for Quilting tutorial. Today I've got my friend Helen Thompson with me. She's dressed appropriately in the stitch outfit. We're having a fun day today and Helen's going to come and show you how to cut the Enchanting Star kit. And Helen's here with the kit. I think she's going to take the gloves off just to make it easier, and she'll explain to you all about how to cut the kit. Just a few safety instructions before we start. You can see that Helen and I have got our safety gear on. We've got our gloves. We're just having a bit of a joke really, but you do have to be careful. We want you to watch that you do not cut your fingers when you're using the cutting board. Make sure you've got a cutting board that's big enough for your fabric. Make sure that you've got a new rotary blade in your cutter, and make sure that you have a ruler big enough to cut your fabric. So I think we're ready to go. Helen will show you what's in the kit, and I hope you enjoy this video.
Start cutting, put a new rotary blade in. With a sharp blade, you'll find it much easier to cut through the thicknesses of fabric that the pattern requires.
The dog just wants to see what's going on, and Helen is now going to show you how to do some cutting.
So, no matter which kind of rotary cutter you have, this kind has a trigger guard and this kind has a sliding guard, so it's always out. I prefer the trigger one as I'm less likely to cut my hands. Line up the ruler with the lines on the mat and your fabric so that you've got the width that you want it to cut. Hold down your ruler, squeeze your trigger, keep your fingers well out of the way, and there you go. It'll come like this. Open it up. It includes everything you need to make the top of Enchanting Stars. First thing you want to do is have a look at the instructions. The key thing about the instructions for Enchanting Stars is that they're colour coded to make it easier for you. When you read the instructions, you'll see that you need to cut 3 different widths of strip: a 2 inch, a 2.5 inch, a 3.5 inch. I'm going to read all the instructions thoroughly to make sure that I know what I'm doing. I don't really need them. The good thing about getting the kit from Passion for Quilting is that when the fabrics arrive, they're all numbered. So you can match up the numbers with the colours on the back of the pattern and the numbers in the instructions. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut my strips. I'm going to cut each colour with a strip 2 inches, one 2.5 inches and one 3.5 inches wide. So, on the instructions, we have the blue, which you're going to cut from 3.5 inch wide strips. You have the yellow, which you're going to cut from the 2.5 inch wide strips. And you have the pink, which you're going to cut from the 2 inch wide strips. This is the 2 inch pile, which is represented by the pink. This is a 2.5 inch pile, which is represented by the yellow. And this is the 3.5 inch pile, which is represented by the blue. For the next part, we need to cut the smaller pieces for our paper piecing. First of all, we're going to tidy our work area by putting the spare fabric back into the box and moving it out of the way. For A1, the first instructions are in blue. So let's take the pile fabric that's 3.5 inches. We have to cut a piece that's 2.5 inches long from the first 18 of the colourway. To do this, you need to start with fabric 1. Then lay fabric 2 on the top. Okay, so I've laid 6 fabrics on top of each other. Any more than that and it will be too difficult to cut. First thing we're going to do is cut about 1/2 inch off the end to get rid of the selvage. And then we need to cut a piece that's 2.5 inches. We'll put them to one side and we'll put the pieces that are laid on top of each other to one side to use again in a bit. And then we have to lay the next 6 on top of each other. Going to cut the selvage off, and then I need to cut 2.5 inches. Add them in the correct order to the pile. It's important that you keep all your fabrics in the right order or it could get quite confusing. That's the 18 pieces that we need for the first part of A1. I like to keep them tidy by putting a clip on them. And the next part of A1 we have to cut from the yellow fabric, which is the 2.5 inch fabric. So for this we have to cut fabric 1 to 8 and then 15 to 24. So I have to pay attention to not cut any extra fabric in the middle that we don't need. That's the first 6 lined up, because we still don't want to cut more than 6 at a time, because there's a risk that the fabrics will move and not cut properly. So we cut the selvage off again. Double check the pattern, and this time it needs to be 4.5 inches. Put them to one side. Remember, we're only going up to fabric 8, so it'll just be the next 2 pieces that we need. So we're skipping fabric 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, and starting again. So that's everything from the yellow strip cut out for A1, so you can add that to your clip. You'll know which one is which because the fabrics are different sizes. Then take the fabrics, pop them into a Ziploc bag. At this point I also like to cut out the paper from the paper pattern for A1. Add it to your bag. Another quick tip, when you're cutting out the paper piecing parts, Jacqueline likes you to leave a smidge around the edge when you cut out the paper. That gives you a little bit of space for when you're trimming down the pattern after you've done your paper piecing. It only uses 8 colourways, and it's cut from the fabric that's represented by the yellow on the table, which is the 2.5 inch width fabric. Right on the bag A1, and then you can store it somewhere, and then it's all ready to be sewn together. So you've got extra fabric in 8 of the colourways, and that's to make all the stars. The other thing you'll need for the stars is to cut a strip of fabric number 29, which is the white one, 3.5 inches. Cut a full length strip and just pop it in the bag for when you come to class. So we need to separate out the 8 colourways that we're going to use, which is fabric 4, this is where it's quite important that you've kept your fabric in the right order, or it could get quite complicated finding the right fabrics again. Number 4, number 5, number 7, number 10, number 12, number 16, number 19, and number 23. You need to cut the selvage from the ones that you haven't cut from already, if this is the order that you're cutting in. And then we need pieces that are 1.5 inches from the fabric. And a piece that's 3 3/4 inches. Pop these together. Put a clip on them to keep them tidy, and put them into a bag. You can cut out the piece from the paper piecing that needs to go A6 and put that in the bag as well to keep that tidy. You'll want to cut out your foundation papers before you get to the class to save time in class. The other thing I like to do is when I have a few scraps of fabric after I've finished cutting the whole pattern, is to stick them on to the colour chart on the back of the pattern, and then just in case my fabrics get muddled up or when I'm trying to organise the pieces, I can always refer back to the colour chart to see which colour is which number. So I've shown you how to cut A1 and A6. The rest you should be able to figure out from that. You need to try to cut all of the fabric in time for the class. It's all cut with the same method. Just double check the measurements on the top. To cut all of the fabric, you can clearly see that we've speeded up this video. It's quite a long process. You should probably budget an entire day if this is your first Jacqueline pattern that you're trying to cut. It's quite a lot of work. I look forward to seeing you on the course.